Jared, the floor is yours for the next 45 minutes, brother. Come on in.
Thank you so much, Eric. Hey everybody, my name's Jared. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Wow, what an introduction. Gosh, no pressure, right? Um, I don't even know let me start my timer here. I don't even know really where I was going to go with this. It's like it's wherever God's going to take it. I guess that's always how it goes because I think, oh, maybe we'll go this way, maybe, but I have no idea where this is going. So you guys are in for a ride just like I am. And apparently I picked, a nice burning hot day to sit in my garage and do this. So I guess that's how it's supposed to be. But, what I can say is, you know, I I live an amazing, abundant life. Good things are always coming my way, right? After cultivating this connection to God, the best outcomes always manifest for me. I mean, I see some nods. I mean, you guys know what I'm talking about, but I'm not bragging. How about that? These are commands to the universe, mantras, right? This is next level stuff entering the world of the spirit. So, I mean, I wanted to talk about the vision of God's will. The book says that we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities, and it tells me to do that back in the doctor's opinion. We're promised that if our lives are grounded in a power greater than ourselves, then our lives will be recreated. And further on, a new life would be given us and a design for living that really works. It's like all these amazing promises. It's okay. Well, what do I have to do? How do I get there? Right. Well, work the steps, obviously. Right. I mean, meetings, service, carrying the message, but above all, and most importantly, develop a relationship with God. And I don't know. I imagine most other people felt the same way that I did when they heard those words for the first time or the 50th time. I don't know. It's like, what does that mean? What is that supposed to look like? What am I supposed to do? How do I do that? Right. It's like, and the answer that usually came to me from that is, oh, we'll work the steps. You'll find out. Thanks. And I mean, it's fundamental spiritual principles in action, right? It's simple but not easy. What do we do here? Arrive at a place of hopelessness and desperation where I'm finally ready to do something that I've never done before that doesn't make any sense to me because I'm out of options. The unknown that I don't know that I've been afraid of finally outweighs the unknown that I know of doing the same thing over and over. Then coming to believe, hoping somewhere down the line that this power that all you guys have been talking about will show up in some sort of capacity in my life like he did for you. Acknowledging the fact that my life isn't really going according to my plan, and quite honestly, I'm not doing a very good job of governing the world or any of you guys. And so what do? Give up control, stop playing God. And you will find out what that looks like, and probably not the way you want to, though. And then get all this stuff out of my mind and onto some paper in front of me so I can see it, and take it all to God in front of somebody else, and then again privately with a new outlook, a different outlook on it. Then go out with the broom and clean up every single thing that God tells me that I have to, and spend the rest of my life repeating this process, helping people who are stuck just like me, and growing this relationship with God. That last part, though, right? Because I mean, God is everywhere you look if your eyes are open. I can I can easily acknowledge the presence of God in my life looking back in the rearview mirror of experience, but I mean, for a long time, it was kind of, I don't know what to call it, karmatic retribution, I guess. After I clean up the past, it just do good things and good things will happen, I hope. So look, in the third step, I get introduced to the fact that my life's none of my business and I'm here to play the role that God assigned me, right? And that's that's great for getting me out of my will and this thought process that I'm on in the beginning. And I don't know. Maybe I held it onto that for at face value for a little bit too long. So, but now I've realigned with God. I'm promised that I can again regain the use of my willpower because it's now the proper use of the will. And I'm given an intuition and the power to help others. I am now a co-creator. Again, this is the vision of God's will in my life. That means I get to play a part in it. And so a lot of you guys on here, if you've ever heard me speak or if you've been to my home group, you already know the miracle of how God showed up in my life and delivered me this job working for the Department of Defense, the Navy in particular. I talk about it often. But there's some other interesting parts, that I haven't really talked about very much. And I remember my sponsor Nathan telling me and talking to me about all this stuff, but I wasn't in a place spiritually that I could grasp what he's telling me. I had to experience it. So, as some of you guys already know, I'm a multiple felon, career criminal. I've been to state prison, and now I work for the DoD with a secret government clearance. I'm a machinist, and I make parts for military aircraft and seacraft. And I was a machinist for a few years before I got this job, in the private sector. And it just still amazes me how God took something that I've had a passion for my whole life, making stuff, and manifested a career for me from that. Anyway, so I'm working in the private sector, and I'm taking some night classes on manufacturing because I always like to continue building on my knowledge of the trade so I can make an even greater contribution to my employer, right? And the teacher that I had for one of these classes, he happened to be a higher level supervisor of a manufacturing department in the government. And he only taught as a adjunct professor a couple nights a week. So, and he'd come in and he'd randomly tell the class when there are openings or these departments are doing hiring or, you have to go on and apply. It's very transparent, blah, 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 all this stuff, right? So this wasn't the first time that I'd heard him tell us about this. But for whatever reason, this time I moved to go talk to him about it. And he knew me and he knew my experience. And he said, "Oh, you should apply." And I said, "Well, I'm not sure. I have a history." And he says, "Oh, it doesn't matter. Just be honest." No. You don't understand about my history. And he looks at me and he says, "It doesn't matter. Just be honest." Okay. So when my professor told us that there was a job opening, the description was for a trades apprentice. And he said, it's a good way to get your foot in the door. I had experience though. And so I told him and he said, "Oh, well, you can wait until the journeyman position opens or you can just try and get in now and figure it out later." So, a lot of you guys, if you've ever heard me speaking, you know the story after that. I get the job. I get in. What an incredible miracle. But don't forget, I have alcoholism. Shortly after such an amazing blessing in my life, I'd say 6 months to a year, I'm restless, irritable, discontent. I'm not satisfied. Everyone here is stupid and they don't know what they're doing. I'm not making enough money. This place runs like an absolute shit show. It's like, and as an apprentice, they're making us go to school and take these classes which have nothing to do with the trade. And I haven't been to school in 15 years, and I'd never did well in those classes because I didn't have any interest in them, right? Now it didn't seem to be any different. So a vacancy opens up for the journeyman position at the base that I was at. I applied, right? And because the government's so transparent in this application process, you can basically follow your application the whole way through and get updates. And it's like this for every position in the government. So if they deem your resume qualified for the job, they move you to the next stage. They score some answers from a questionnaire you have to answer. If that ranks high enough, you get referred to the hiring manager. And based on the amount of positions that they have available, they notify if you get selected for the job. So I get the update, right? Not qualified. That's weird. My resume literally had all of the requirements that they were looking for in it. Oh, well, whatever. It doesn't matter. Maybe it wasn't the right time. A couple months later, another vacancy opens up. I applied again, not qualified. Now, it's 2016 or 2017, and I'm barely squeaking by on my less than $20 an hour salary. San Diego is expensive. I don't want to move, but another 4 years of the apprenticeship isn't looking very sustainable to me. So, you know what? All right. Well, let's see what's out there. Journeyman machinist positions within the government. There were a few military bases in Arkansas, Oklahoma, and I think Idaho were looking to fill positions. Okay, why not? I applied. Let's just see. I was qualified. Arkansas and Oklahoma wanted, they referred me to the hiring managers. Arkansas even wanted to set up a phone interview. Yeah, why not? Okay, I'll do that. I blew them away in the interview. They wanted me to come down and run their whole shop. I could have a budget. I could purchase new machines, tools, whatever I needed. All the work in the entire state, they said, would come through me. They sent me the formal job offer. I had 3 days to respond. Took it to God. Arkansas doesn't have a coastline. I guess I'll be trading surfing for hunting and fishing. I mean, the cost of living's cheap. We could get a nice piece of land. We could have animals. Megan loves horses. I mean, I could even have my own CNC machines. Just walk out to the shop in the barn. What do I do, God? Major life changes. I need some guidance and direction. I passed. It wasn't there. I didn't know what I was looking for, but it wasn't there. So nothing in the government happens quickly, in case you guys didn't already know that. All of this stuff played out, over a couple months. So I'm still in San Diego. The 50-cent raise they gave us for the apprenticeship wasn't really doing much. I got to keep looking, right? So I talked to my sponsor, Nathan, about all this, and he, always speaking from spiritual principles, he tells me, you don't have to leave to go after the money. God will manifest it here for you. It just takes longer. Let go of what you think it's supposed to look like. I'm impatient. I'm barely making it financially, but I'm still making it. It's still somehow working out, right? Just not how I want it to. So another position opens up for a journeyman machinist for I think it was the Army in upstate New York, right next to a ski resort. Trade surfing for snowboarding in the winter. Yeah, I've still got some family in New York. You know what? I'll apply. Qualified, referred, interviewed, selected. They send me the formal job offer with a potential start date three months out, so I could get my affairs in order for the cross country move. The money's there. Another big life decision. What do I do, God? Talk to the family. They're implemented in this too. Megan and I, now we're living together. We just got married with our oldest at the time. I think he was 4 or 5. She's working in recovery as a tech, making like a little bit more than minimum wage and going to school. She was open to it. I accepted the offer, submitted the paperwork, right? They said they process the paperwork and get back to me within a couple days and email me, reporting instructions. And they were even willing to partially cover travel expenses. All right, here we go. New life changes. Next chapter starting. Now, I'm not really too happy about leaving San Diego. My life here, all my friends, the AA community. But I guess this is the next indicated step, right? Okay, here we go. That was on a Wednesday. I go to work on Thursday, and I'm doing my thing, working, whatever. And I go to break, and I look at my phone, and I had a missed call and a voicemail, and it was from a New York area code. Oh, okay, well. Maybe they needed some more information or they wanted to confirm the travel expense allowance, whatever. So I listened to the voicemail. The lady identifies herself from the base I accepted the job at, and she says, I'm sorry, we've never had to do anything like this before, but we're going to have to retract the employment offer. Please call for some more information. What? So I call the number. She says, Mr. Schneid, you have felonies. Several of them. I said, yeah, and I disclosed them to you. And I currently work for the Navy. And she said, well, I don't know how any of that works with them, but we're not going to be able to hire you. And you know what? This was definitely not the first time I had to deal with this issue, but something was different this time. There's no desire to push past it. There's no fire inside driving me to keep going. No intuitive thoughts saying, no, don't give up, go back. It wasn't there. Just an acceptance of what had just happened and what is, a position of neutrality. I had my little plans and designs about what direction I thought my life was supposed to go in. And God very clearly stepped in and said, no, you're not going that way. And Nathan's words echoed in my head, right? That you don't have to leave to go after the money. God will manifest it here. It just takes longer. It takes longer than I want it to. So, another journeyman position opens up in San Diego in a different building that I was at, but on the same base. I applied. Again, not qualified. Now, this makes no sense. Now, I'll tell you that in most things throughout my life, I'm a quitter. As soon as things start getting rough or uncomfortable, I'm gone. But for whatever reason, I held this vision. I was supposed to be in that journeyman position. But be careful. I had to find out the hard way that if you hold a desire too tightly, it creates resistance. So what's the path here, God? Through meditation, I'm guided to go back and review the application. On every single vacancy announcement, all the way at the bottom, there's an EEO phone number, equal employment opportunity with the agency offering the job. So, I call it and I ask him, well, why am I deemed not qualified for this position? And I start citing all these other positions and referrals and interviews that I've had for this exact same job or even higher graded positions all across the United States. So the answer that came back, oh, you're not qualified because you're an apprentice. What? Now I'm even more confused than I was when I started. How does my current position have anything to do with the position that I'm applying for? Why are bases in other states lining up for me, but here at home, they won't even give me the time of day? They couldn't give me a straight answer. It just says you're not qualified because you're an apprentice. So I talked to almost every person in a leadership position that oversaw the apprenticeship over the next couple months with the same questions. And nobody knew. The farthest that I got was that somebody told me that the program was designed that way, that once you're in, you got to complete it. And if you had the experience, you should have been flagged and not got in. Somebody messed up. Well, guess what, buddy? Now you're stuck. Well, can I test out? I mean, I have the knowledge and experience already at the journeyman level. Let me test out. Nobody knew. So I talked to a lot of people and I made a lot of contacts. And through a series of events, higher up reaches out to me and he's let me know that the main coordinator, the head guy for the nationwide apprenticeship program, he'd be on site, the next week, and I should talk to him. So I catch up with this guy. I hand him my 10-page resume because that's how the government likes it, and I explain my situation. And I ask him the same question: can I test out of the program? Nobody seems to know. The only thing that I can see is that I'm stuck because of somebody else's error. And he said, well, it's not so much that you can or you can't test out of the program. It's just that nobody ever has. Challenge accepted. Everything that I desire is making its way to me. And he said, let me do some digging into this. He took my resume, he shook my hand, and he went into his meeting, right? So a week or two later, I get an email from him. And he said he found out that this issue is confined to certain bases with this particular apprenticeship program, and it was right. I should never have got in with the experience that I had. It's an error on their end, and he's passed the word, but they can't make any special cases. But if another opening came up, I could apply for it. Now, I've talked to so many people, and I had contacts all over. So I go to my contact in HR who did the hiring, and I tell her all this information. I gave her my resume, and she looks it over, and she turns to me, and she goes, you know what? I actually just opened up a vacancy in your building. You should apply for it. 2 weeks later, I'm in the journeyman position. $10 an hour raise. And it's a weird dynamic between going with the flow of God's will versus trying to make things happen. God's will always manifest for my needs if they're relevant for the path that he's designated for me. But so look, we're not done. Throughout God and Alcoholics Anonymous, you guys have taught me to go all in everything that I do, right? Half measures avail us nothing. Be present, be engaged, enthusiasm, love, tolerance, service to others. I mean, these aren't just confined within AA. These principles need to touch every aspect of my life, and they did. So the leader of the shop that I was at, he'd been there 30 years, and he decided he wanted to retire. Within 2 months of him leaving, I was in that position, officially. Beat out 5 other people for the position. And I know because they tested and interviewed all of us at the same time. Another raise, more responsibility to handle with grace. So I was the leader for 6 years. These 2 promotions happened within 4 months of each other. So where am I going with this? Tyler knows that I love steps 10 and 11. A lot of you guys, if you've ever heard me talk, you probably do too. I love talking about this stuff and how I've implemented it into my life. And I love it so much because there's so much practical stuff that it tells us to do based on spiritual laws, universal across all platforms. all religions, all books, all of which talk about the exact same thing differently to reach their targeted audience. It's you just pick your flavor. The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous was the book that helped me to even begin to understand all the others. I remember hearing Mark Houston talk about steps 10 and 11 as being an abyss. The practices, the disciplines, the returns, it's endless. There are levels upon levels upon levels. It's like, how deep do you want to go with this stuff? What do you want your life to look like? Learning to properly use the stuff that I don't understand. And there's real power behind it. I mean, you can call it aligning your will with God, being in sync with the world, hacking the universe, tapping into the quantum field, because science has entered the chat now, apparently. It's all the same thing. I literally just said the same thing 4 different ways. And I don't know, I've been involved in some really interesting practices the past, several months. Let me talk about one that's kind of near and dear to my heart, which is manifesting, co-creating, the power of directed thought, right? And manifesting is not just thinking thoughts and hoping that they come true. Manifestation is a tool that I use precisely, systematically, intentionally, with a purpose. I use it as a tool to rewire my mind, my body, my spirit, to help me do the work to achieve the stuff that I desire. And look, I wouldn't even have the desire unless God had put everything that I need to achieve it deep down inside me already. And it's like some calling or some sixth sense that I put off or discredited for so many years because, I didn't think I can do it. I can't do it, right? That statement in itself, fear. The evil and corroding thread that the fabric of my existence is intertwined with. I can't do it really means I don't know how. For me, I throw in the towel quick, or I don't even try at all. And I remember back when I was a little kid, this memory just popped into my head way back when I was learning how to ride a bike, random. I remember I kept falling down and screaming that I couldn't do this. The whole neighborhood heard me. All I needed was a little guidance and practice, but I was convinced at the time I cannot do this. I remember early on in AA, in this sobriety, I remember long before I did the work, sitting in a meeting and hearing some speaker share, and they were eloquent and they captivated the whole room with their testimony. And I remember wishing that one day maybe I could share like that. I had to learn how to use manifesting properly. It's a tool, just like any of these other spiritual tools that were given. Watch, pause, turn, ask, cease. It's specifically designed to remove the mental obstacles that are blocking me, right? What self-doubt, fear, perfectionism, resistance, feeling overwhelmed, other people's expectations. It's about reprogramming my mind, aligning it with God, next level thought life stuff. I mean, manifesting isn't just thinking or hoping. It's about consciously commanding my experience into form. It's not asking, it's initiating. We get to do all kinds of really cool stuff when we align with God's will. When you ask with alignment, the universe responds with precision. Remember, we're agents of God. We are empowered to act on behalf of the creator of the universe. The issue is that I don't know what my permissions are, what I have access to being aligned with this power. Here, let me give you an easy example. How many of you guys on here today have ever been going to, I don't know, an event, work, the store, wherever? It's a big parking lot and there's cars and people everywhere, right? It's packed. How many of you guys have ever used the power of directed thought to manifest a parking spot? Lots of people do this without even thinking anything of it, right? I mean, in fact, this just happened the other day. Megan and I were going to Costco. It's a zoo. We're doing laps in this parking lot, right? And she says out loud, "Come on, parking angel." She's been saying that since I first met her. And sure enough, I turn into the next row and someone's pulling out right up in the front by the entrance. How many people have been randomly thinking about someone and they call, or you see them out in your daily activities? Why do you guys think there's a direction in the book about this for making amends? It's God's job to provide the willingness and the opportunity. I'm supposed to pray for the willingness until it comes. That's what my book tells me to do. And if I have the willingness and I can't find them, I pray to God to provide the opportunity. Then bam, they pop up in my life. But the opposite's true here too. How many times have you thought poorly of something and that's exactly how it turned out? Oh, I don't want to go to this. I'm not going to have a good time. Or, oh, I didn't get a good enough sleep last night. My whole days are going to be off. Or, I don't really like those classes. They don't interest me. For whatever reason, I'm programmed to always default to the negative. Oh, I'm not going to like it. I'm not good enough. It won't work out for me. It's all over my inventory. But as of the past several years, I have plenty of experience with using these thoughts, this vision with intent. Look, the universe doesn't judge your thoughts, good or bad. It just responds to them. So pay attention to your thought life. Let me give you another example. Back to the job, right? I've been the lead for 6 years. I'm happy. I'm content. There's no need for me to go look for other jobs. I have what I want and I want what I have. It's the best definition of happiness that I've ever heard. Wanting what you have. I work an extremely technical job. Lots of variables, lots of math, lots of unforeseen problems and circumstances, right? I get to use my brain at full capacity every day. Basically, we have another department that we work closely with that uses computers to aid in the manufacturing process. So we program these big robots to cut metal into specific shapes, and they basically do the same thing with computers for the really complicated stuff. And I know how to do it too. So over the past couple of years, we've had a hiring freeze. Maybe a year after I became the lead, I think. And we've had people from several departments who've retired, and there's been no backfill. Some of the guys from this computer department who retired were really smart and really good at what they did. And they ended up taking that knowledge with them and not passing it on. So there's been problems, delays, discrepancies. It costs a lot of time and money. Now, I'm only legally allowed to do so much of what they do because of government restrictions, we can say. But I really enjoy that aspect of the job, and I help out as I can. You know what? If they ever opened up a position, that's the only other department that I would ever consider going to. I set the intent. Last year, they announced that they had enough funding to bring on 2 more of those positions, but it was open to the public, and I'd have to compete for it. No problem. I already had the job. I told myself it's mine already. I visualized myself sitting upstairs, working on the computers, making the parts. Over and over and over, I did this. I said it out loud. I knew the job that was mine, right? So the position opened. I applied, qualified, referred to the hiring manager, told the vision. Now they need to sort through all these resumes and grade them based on skill and experience. I've been a part of a hiring panel before. The resumes get printed out, and all the names are blacked out to keep it fair. Now, this is in close proximity to my shop, and I know a lot of the supervisors who are on this particular panel. I run into him, later in the day, and I ask him, "Oh, did you guys finish yet?" And he says, "Oh, well, we'll probably finish tomorrow." They had one resume already decided on that exceeded all the criteria that they were looking for, and then there's only one position left, and the rest of the resumes look pretty similar, so they'll probably make a decision tomorrow. I had no doubt. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't worried. I confirmed with myself that I had the job already and that God had great things in store for me, right? The universe always provides for my highest good. So I've been in this position for a year now, and even though I'm technically the new guy, I'm looked upon in the department as a leader. And in fact, a couple weeks ago, I was directly honored by the Navy and given a very prestigious award for my, what do they say, commitment, ingenuity, and exceptional technical skills for solving some critical problems that they had. I was just doing my job. I love what I do. Thanks, God. I found that there are a couple states of being that the universe responds to. Directed thought, gratitude, and desperation. And my sponsor Nathan's been telling me about this for years. And I mean, even back when I was making my vision board, some of you guys have heard me talk about that. He would tell me, tell yourself that you're wealthy. that you have perfect health, that you already have the job or the thing that you want, and then to be grateful for it like it already happened, right? So I will tell all of you guys that God will give you everything that you desire, but there are some rules, some laws that you have to follow. First, you have to set clear intentions. You can't be vague. You have to be specific. You can't just, I don't know, wish for more money, right? Oh, I want more money. And later that day, I find a penny on the ground. Oh, wish fulfilled. It's like, no, it's see it clearly, confirm the intention. And tell myself that I already have it, and then thank God for giving it to me. And do this over and over, right? The human mind is an incredible thing. My brain can't tell the difference between an actual event and a vivid imagination. Use this stuff to your advantage. God takes care of his kids. Why do you think professional athletes, Olympic athletes use this stuff? Envision perfect performance every time. See yourself in the job, the position, unlocking the door to your new home, adjusting the seat in your new car, whatever, right? Better men than we are using this stuff constantly. And that's just the tip of the iceberg on this statement. I just saw this the other day. Everybody knows who Jim Carrey is, right? The famous actor. He uses this power. He even talks about it. Just another guy trying to make it big as an actor, starting from the bottom. He would talk about, he would visualize lead roles. He believed it was his destiny to make it big. He would sit on a hill overlooking Hollywood and say things like, I'm a very desirable actor. Everybody wants to work with me. Stuff like that. He even went as far as writing himself a $10 million check for acting services provided and dated it a couple years in the future. And he put it in his wallet and he pulled it out and looked at it all the time. 6 months before the date on that check, he had a role paying him $12 million. Set the intention and be grateful that God's provided for this for you already, right? The thought needs to be accompanied by the emotion. Otherwise, I'm just, I don't know, blowing out candles on my birthday cake and making a wish. Now, look, a lot of the stuff that I just talked about are material things. Now, if you've been around here for any length of time and done this work, you already know that the stuff isn't what's important. And the book even says that we're careful never to pray for our own selfish ends, and that it doesn't work, right? That's because, again, the stuff was never meant to make me happy or complete me. The stuff is just my belief made visible. Physical things are only meant to complement my life, not define it. That's why if you're operating from a place of lack, these things never even show up. They're way off in the distance or seem unachievable. So God will give you all the wonderful things, that you desire, but don't ever think that they'll make you happy if that's the purpose. So there's a condition to all this stuff, right? Doubt. Every doubt is a new command to the universe, right? To not honor my original request. It's new instructions that override the, I don't know, program, for lack of a better word. They revert you back to the previous state. Self-defeating beliefs that keep you chained to the past or a lower plane. The spiritual law of correspondence. Fear reflects as obstacles. Doubt reflects as delay. Worry and impatience are signals that I've stepped out of the line of God's will. Gratitude is vibration at a higher frequency. I don't know how deep you guys want me to go with this, but I mean, Eric told me to just send it. So, I mean, gratitude breeds opportunities, right? It's not like feelings. In fact, feeling is just a word we invented to describe the conscious awareness of the vibration that we're in. I don't want to get too scientific on this platform, but there are universal laws that govern our existence and touch every aspect of our lives, whether you know it or not. Vibration, detachment, inspired action, divine oneness, correspondence, attraction, relativity, rhythm. What if I told you that you can alter the trajectory of your life once you come into alignment with this stuff? Yeah, and I mean, so I wasn't trying to turn this into a talk on the importance of our thought life, but it is what it is. Emmett Fox would talk about our thoughts determine our reality. Bill Wilson understood this implicitly. What if the thoughts that we have dictate the direction of our lives? Correspondence. The outside mirrors the inside. As above, so below. How your thinking and feeling affects your reality. Again, thought life. Thoughts determine reality. If you have negative self-talk, if you carry guilt, resentment, if you speak negatively of yourself or others, even in your head, this is a lower state of vibration, right? You'll see a lot of this stuff play out in your life. And then I start to wonder why stuff's not working out for me. All I start to see is stuff that aligns with these thoughts, with these feelings. Low vibration and low frequency attract the light. But when the opposite, when I carry positive energy, positive thought, the universe responds in kind. How many of you guys did this work and you noticed your thought life change? And then as a great shock, things start to work out. Life wasn't so bad and I wasn't making a heavy go into life anymore. How much time do I got here? 35. Everyone think back to a time when you're drinking or using, right? Lower plane, disconnected from source, separate from God. The direction of life was futile. It was meaningless. And you might have even accomplished some incredible things during those times, right? But where did it get you? What was I thinking during those times? My will, my way. I need to make this happen. Self, substance, the actions I was taking. I was stuck in the perpetual state waiting for the world to change. Oh, if she would act right, if it's their fault, or it's the people at work, or one day I'll get my big break, or I'm in control, or whatever. And it's like my thoughts are vibrating lack. If when I'm trapped in this self-imposed crisis, nothing ever changes. In computer programming language, we call this a loop. I'm attracting negative outcomes into my life by being in that state. But the problem is that I don't know what I'm in it. The negative thought starts to drive me and manifest in my life by getting worse and worse. And I'm stuck in this loop until something happens. So, and we know coming in, it's like, what happens? I absolutely cannot stand the way that I'm feeling inside any longer. I've reached a point where I can't imagine my life with or without alcohol, or fill in the blank, right? I've reached the jumping off place. New state of vibration. I'm desperate. Something has to change. Help. And directed thought, emotion. Most everybody in here has had that experience, so you know what I'm talking about. The crack in the ego, in the self, is where God's able to come in. But it's fleeting. It's transitory. It doesn't last. That's why I bounced in and out of AA for so many years. That's why I have to grab onto it and get busy doing the work. Being in the grace of God is urging you to take action. Faith without works is dead. All these things we hear all the time that are in the book, because it's all based on spiritual laws. So I take the actions, right? My thinking's all over the place, but I even just partially believed what you guys were telling me would work for me too. And God showed up. But the line of my thinking shifted just enough to allow God in. And I start getting these little aha moments of the presence of God, clarity, whatever you want to call them. The ones that assure me that I'm on the right path. And you know what? Maybe this is the better way. The life can work out. And just enough of them to keep me moving forward and not giving into temptation in the beginning, right? And depending on how seriously I'm doing this thing, because sometimes I don't even know, but it's apparent through my actions. And all of a sudden, something strange happens. And at some point in the very recent past, I stopped constantly thinking about obsessing over drugs and alcohol. And it hits me. Something that used to be a constant yearning, nagging thought and feelings gone. I haven't thought about it, whatever it is, in days, weeks, months. Something, I couldn't live without on a sometimes hourly basis has been removed. I didn't notice it, but my thoughts changed. My attitude changed. And some good stuff starts happening in my life. And then, I don't know, in my experience at least, I come to this fork in the road. I've got some good stuff going on in my life. My life straightened out for the most part. I'm not in jail. My family came back. I got the job. I feel good. I mean, my life looks totally different than it did when I was at the bottom. And you know what? It's comfortable at this level. I can just coast now. The path moving forward looks reasonably straight up to a little hill. I can't really see it, but I'm sure it's fine. Or the opposite path. Continue with the work, dive deep, keep walking up the mountain, effort, maybe some stuff that I don't want to look at or think about, emotional upheavals, uncertainty because the path winds around and I can't see what it's going to look like. And after years of taking the first path, I finally escape this loop and I do the work. I'm so beaten down inside that something shifts and I take the other path. New vibration, new frequency. I'm desperate again, but it's different this time. So many years of fighting the process has worn away the resistance that I had, and I submit. I'm willing to set aside my judgments and my ideas. I didn't make that choice. I'm lazy, unmotivated, right? I'm scared, but as kind of a last ditch effort, I just go with it. So I go all in on this recovery process. And like I did what I needed to get loaded. Nothing's off limits. I'll wait for instructions. I'll do whatever people are living the kind of life I want to live tell me to do, right? Get out of the way, cease fighting what God's bringing me. Start to reach within and find out what this relationship with God honestly looks like for me. Direct my thoughts, clean up my past, then bam, another miracle happens. The world changes. People aren't as irritating to me as like they once were. Miraculous things start to happen in my life. Jobs appear or change. I'm trusted and honored with responsibility, status. People interact with me differently. And for me, I slowly start to realize that none of the people or the jobs actually changed. It was my relationship with the source that changed. It was me who changed. A whole new world comes into view. Like, oh my God, this stuff actually works. And I start to catch myself in gratitude, grateful throughout the day for this amazing internal shift that's happened in my life. And out of nowhere, I want to tell people about it. People like me. The power of God works. You can rise above that life that you thought you were stuck in. You can have everything you wanted in this world. You can experience real joy and peace, right? Now I'm interested in helping other people to escape their problems. And we begin to move towards a genuine care and concern for others, altruism. My life begins to be largely motivated by love. The vision of God's will is love. I begin putting love back out into the world and in turn receiving it. Love is the highest vibration, the strongest frequency, both thought and emotion. Love transcends the boundaries of limitation. When you align with love, the world responds differently to you. Divine oneness, we're all connected. We're all part of God. And that's a realization through the inventory. If we're all part of God, if I resent you, then I'm blocked from the God in you, which is the same as the God in me. If I harm you, I harm me. Everyone isn't awake to this level of consciousness, right? Everyone can only meet you currently from their own level of spiritual awareness. But it's never about them. It is always about my relationship with the source. Why do you think when we're aligned with God, we exhibit love, patience, tolerance, empathy, understanding, kindness, right? The spiritual maladies subdued. The bedevilments aren't running my life. What you're doing is fine when I'm right with God. I feel at ease. I feel like I have a purpose. I begin to understand tolerance from a more spiritual side. And what you're doing has nothing to do with me, but rather your relationship with Source. And I love you for it. Just as you are without judgment. Now, don't get me wrong. I fail at this all the time. My ego, my man-made false sense of self is a really hard thing to get rid of. God doesn't need your permission to work in your life, but he does need your cooperation. So if I could say anything in the last minute or so that I have, stop enforcing limitation and lack through your speech, thought, and emotion. Exactly what you think you're worthy of, the universe will deliver to you. Stop thinking small, right? Expect miracles. God's not on a budget. He takes care of his kids as long as we do two things, right? Remember back in the third step, we had a new employer. Being all powerful, God will provide everything that you need as long as you stay close to God and you perform his work well. Am I doing that? How can I make an even greater contribution to my employer? Align my thought life, help his kids, my brothers and sisters, service, action. That's the vision, isn't it? And doing this stuff, I get to experience an incredibly powerful line that's right in the middle of the fear inventory in the book. We get to let God demonstrate through us what God can do. Don't miss this thing. The vision of God's will in your life. What do you want your life to look like? That's about all the time I have. My name's Jared. I'm a recovered alcoholic.